Okay, so we'll be talking today the relevant macroeconomic parameters. So what we mean by macro as distinguished that from the micro. So in your class in microeconomics, you deal with supply and demand, and these are computations. Okay, so you will compute probably the GDP and GNP. Okay, um, and then we will be also discussing the supply and demand, which is more on the graph whether there is a surplus or lacking or deficit. So in the larger aspect, we call those factors that contribute to economy as the macroeconomic parameters. So what are those macroeconomic parameters? So it may be asked what macroeconomic parameters are crucial in the determination and review of the budget. Okay, so the answer will be the major macroeconomic parameters crucial in the determination and review of the budget include the following. Okay, the level and growth in the real and nominal gross national product. What does it mean? Okay, the GNP, okay, the per capita of the people, okay, dividing the income by the number of population, okay, and how and to the, that's one way of determining whether the people are living below poverty line or above poverty line. And in fact, this is the reason why those who are receiving below the minimum wage may be exempt. Okay, right now they are exempt in the payment of tax. Okay, so every now and then the below poverty line, which is the marking line whether your income is below, which means you are also living in poverty, or above, which means you are probably in the middle or upper class. So that also determines depending on the economic growth of the country. So it's not always the same from last year and in the years to come. So that would really depend based on other aspects like the inflation, the rising of the um, the prices of the commodities. Okay, because if your income is still the same but the prices of the foods are rising, like the fare and all other aspects of economy are rising, so that income may not be sufficient. Probably you are living in above poverty line, but at the moment, especially when there's a crisis in the when there's an inflation, you are now living in the below poverty line. Okay. So what else aside from that? The inflation rate. This is the one I'm talking about. Okay. Inflation right now is very high because of the war that's going on in Ukraine, and probably there is it will be pushed through the move that the the communist countries will no longer honor dollar. And in fact, right now there are groups, the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, and Korea, in Korea, and South Africa. Okay, the group themselves, China rather, and South Africa group themselves, and they do away with the dollar. Okay, lately Putin announced that you cannot eat dollar. Okay, you cannot use dollar paper, which is actually printed according to him, just printed without any basis. Okay, and it's not useful during winter. That's why, according to him, what's important is the natural resources, and it is advantageous to them. He's speaking on that manner simply because it is advantageous to his country. Okay, if the country will use as a mode of exchange the natural resources they have, it is advantageous in his own country because he has the natural gas which supplies the entire Europe. Okay, in fact, Germany right now, the economy of Germany really depends on Russian oil. Okay, and during winter, probably the next month, they will be suffering from cold weather because that gas is used to heat their house. Okay, and if it continues to rise, then eventually the economy of Germany and some countries in Europe that depend on Russian oil will eventually fall. And that is why they find it difficult. The Germany finds it difficult whether they have to support Ukraine in fight against Russia, simply because they also benefit from the Russian gas. Okay, so because of the limitation, because of the sanction given by the United Nations, in fact, they really impose that as much as possible we should not buy Russian gas because the money that is used, that will be the money that they receive in exchange of that gas will be used to fund the fight against Russia. Okay, so the dollar that they receive will mean a death of a Ukrainian. No, as much as possible we should not. But the president is not into political aspect. He doesn't even care what will happen if we're going to buy gas from Russia. Okay, mind you, this even the fertilizer. I just realized that the reason why we have also higher price for fertilizer is that our fertilizer also comes from that country. Some, because a component of the fertilizer, I think phosphorus, is a residue or a part of the natural gas. Okay, so these are explosive. Okay, if you recall one time in Iran where a stockpile of urea, or I think phosphorus, exploded, and it creates a very big explosion that even creates an earthquake within that region. Okay, so if it's explosive, these are actually natural gas, so plants as well needs it, and that's why we cannot do away with those. Okay, so we really need to import those fertilizer from these countries. It's a difficult decision because we have to level. Is it should we not help our country? Okay, who is now suffering from no food crisis because we have less production because of we have no supply from no supply of fertilizers, or should we abide by the sanction, okay, given to Russia, okay, that we should not as much as possible buy their products or simply try to explore other source of energy. Okay, so those are the dilemma. Okay, for president, it's really difficult to decide because being the secretary as well of the Department of Agriculture, as he chose to become the secretary and leader of that department, which he promised to lower down the price of rice per kilo to 20. He should do something else. Okay, otherwise he cannot be true to what he said during the SONA. Now, so that's one. Okay, inflation rate, the 90 treasury bill rates, and London interbank, okay, offered rate. So these are major macroeconomic parameters that actually determines right now. So even the war in Europe also affects us. Okay, so I know you feel really the effects, right? Like the prices of crude oil. Okay, the gasoline is now rising up to I think 73. Okay, so that is the effect. So what do you expect? So you can expect later on that all of the prices will go high. Why? Because when you transport these goods, okay, from the farmland during harvest season or harvest time, and transport it to the um, to the buyer, you have to pay hire the vehicle, and these vehicles also need fuel to run. So, and fuel now is very expensive. So eventually, that price, the money that we add in purchasing the fuel will also be added in the price of the commodity. Okay, now how are the macroeconomic parameters determined, okay, as basis in the budget level? The macroeconomic parameters or the targets and the assumption which form the basis of the budget estimates, okay, are determined by the DBCC, okay, which coordinates the projection of the main fiscal economic authorities such as the NEDA or the National Economic Development Authority. So they are the one who can foresee on what are the needs. So the Department of Finance, depending on how much money we have, how much money they collected on the two bureaus. What are those? The Bureau of Internal Revenue and the Bureau of Customs. So they are in charge in the collection of the taxes. For Department of Finance, those taxes are within the country. So employees, even if they do not want to pay the tax, still they're compelled because a part of their salary is deducted for the payment of tax. So Bureau of Customs, every time you export or import, you have to pay custom duties. So still a money collected by the government. And the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas and the Department of Budget and Management based on historical and desired patterns of economic behavior. So what does that mean? So the budget that they prepare is based on historical. Okay, so they know the events in history, when will it fall, or what will happen if there is an inflation. So by that they can project what are the needs. Okay, so those are the parameters in the preparation of the budget. Okay, the money they had, and then the projected based on the history. Okay, like in this particular month, there will be no income of the farmers. Why? Because this month, by history, is a typhoon month, and there are many people, and by history, by records, by statistics, people in this area will have no income. Okay, so now, what are gross national product? Okay, gross national product is the measure in the real total value of all the final goods and services produced in the economy in a given year. So all in all, summing all the aspects, services, banking industry, business, all of that, okay, summing it all, that's called the gross national product. Okay, so if you look at the newspaper, there's a portion there, the businesses, okay, and these are the this could be any services, okay, kind of mga banking industry, transportation, okay, kind of mga real estate. Those income, okay, the coming in and out of or activities of that business is determined, okay, yearly, okay, and we call it as the gross national product. Bright people, or those who are into business, they simply sell and buy stocks out of these um, publicly listed corporations. What that is publicly listed? These are actually the corporations you can see, okay, in the newspaper, the one I'm talking about. And they simply buy stocks and sells it. Okay, how are they going to sell it? They just simply look at the graph. Okay, or if they do not have a graph, they just simply read the newspapers at the business section, and they will know it because there is an opening. Okay, when it open, there is a value, okay, of the stocks and closing. Okay, so you will know whether it is progressing because there is a trend. Okay, the time it opens and the time it closes, if there's an increase, then probably in the next year, in the next opening on the following day, it will still rise. So if it rises, then it's the best time for them to buy. If it declines, then if they can see a pattern of declining of the stocks by determining the opening and closing of the business day, then by opening at the time they opened the transaction of the estate, that this is the amount, this is the price. When they close it, this is the price of the stocks. So if there's a difference, if the difference is from lower to higher, and the tendency is that on the following day it still goes up. So it's what's the best time to sell? When the pattern is it's lower in opening and higher in closing. Okay, but if it's the other way around, when the business opens at higher but closes on the when the closing time, okay, when it closes the value is lower, then it's not the best time to buy. All you have to do is probably sell the stocks. Okay. Well, it's easy to do that, but it will really take time. So some really become business billionaire doing that kind of business, simply buying and selling stocks. Can you be a stock holder of a company but publicly listed? Yes, just like Jollibee. You can become a stockholder by buying. I think the minimum requirement is to own stocks of at least 5,000 pesos. I tried it. I applied in Call Financial, and before it's Call Financial. Right now I think they have different meaning. But the requirement to add a signature specimen submitted, I forgot to sign it, and I just forgot, so I do not invest in stocks. And I should realize that it's time consuming. Keep on looking at the graph, when is the best time to buy, when is the best time to sell. Okay, so in your case, if you had the luxury of time, probably can join the business buying, selling stocks. Okay, what is the reason behind all that? The Jollibee cannot, let's say Jollibee, these are publicly listed, but they were publicly listed. These are corporations that wanted to expand by simply asking money from the public. Okay, so meaning if you put that money, let's say 5,000, you become part owner of that company, like Jollibee. Okay, so this business is not at all time, at one time, billionaire. So they may be good in managing. That is why when they wanted to expand, they ask companies or people who has the money, they don't know what to do, to put up the money there in their company. Yeah, and that is why it really expands, because they ask money from the people, from the public. Okay, so if you purchase their stock, you are a stockholder of that company. Okay. Now, to avoid double counting, however, GNP only sums up, okay, all the value added, okay, the final products of the considered final value of the goods. What do you mean by this final value of the goods? there's what we call as the in, indirect and direct tax. Okay. Um, the value added tax. Okay, there's a for if you are the supplier, if you are the supplier, um, if you can pass it, if it's a indirect tax, you can pass that tax or the burden imposed, which is 12%, to the final consumer. So instead of you are the one who will be burdened by the payment of the value added tax or the EBAT, expanded value added tax, is 12% on services and goods. Okay, you can pass that burden to the consumer. So how? By adding the value of the products, or adding the price, okay, at the amount of 12%. Okay, so how does the GNP affect the budget? Okay, higher the GNP generally results in the larger tax base, okay, and consequently higher revenue collection from the domestic market, which could be made available to the government to finance public services and development programs and projects. So we have three basic programs, activities, and projects. Okay, so all all of the budget must arise from these activities, programs, and projects. So in fact, um, in your exam, right, I asked you to make prepare some document, okay, was an example of a project and programs and activities. Now, you open your camera to prove that you're around. Okay, I want to check if you're still there. Open it now. So you are not there. You are not listening. You are doing something else except Canonigo. Who else? Lopez. Oh, where are the others? Si Pasio, wala. Si Punzalan, just open there and then the another round. Okay, so good. Okay, you have to listen. Otherwise, we will have